Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Madam Speaker, this is a sad day in our republic, but not as sad or disheartening as the violence we witnessed in the Capitol last Wednesday. We are all responsible. My colleagues are responsible for not condemning rioters this past year, like those who barricaded the doors of the Seattle Police Department and attempted to murder the officers inside. Others, including myself, are responsible for not speaking out sooner, before the president misinformed and inflamed a violent mob who tore down the American flag and brutally beat Capitol Police officers. Madam Speaker, we must all do better. These articles of impeachment are flawed, but I will not use process as an excuse. There is no excuse for President Trump's actions. The president took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Last week, there was a domestic threat at the door of the Capitol, and he did nothing to stop it. That is why, with a heavy heart and clear resolve, I will vote yes on these articles of impeachment.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve.
Madam Speaker, could I ask how much time each side has?
The gentleman from Ohio has 36 1/4 minutes remaining. And the gentleman from New York has 36 3/4 minutes remaining.
We reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Auchincloss.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Chair, a mob desecrated our Capitol, killed a police officer, and attempted to overthrow our government on the orders of the President of the United States. Immediate impeachment is our duty under a Constitution that compels us to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. As a Marine officer, I defended our democracy from foreign enemies. As a member of Congress, I am solemnly resolved to defend it from domestic ones. With this vote, we strike a blow for moral leadership. I yield back.
Yields back. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, America is at a crossroads. As the violent riots at the Capitol last week so painfully and shockingly reminded us, the unhinged partisan rhetoric that too often consumes the political dialogue in this country has become toxic and is tearing us apart. If we continue down this path, there's no telling how much damage to our union there may be. Sadly, that's what's happening here today. The majority is rushing through yet a second impeachment of President Trump, who has but 7 days remaining in office. As prominent constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley has cautioned, today a dangerous precedent is being set that could lead to the normalization of snap impeachments without any hearings or any meaningful discussion or debate. The majority is ramming through this House the most potent tool at our disposal without a single hearing, turning a process that usually takes months into a few short hours. We haven't heard a testimony from a single witness. We haven't heard from any experts on the nature of these charges, nor the damage this effort could inflict on our republic. We didn't even know how this debate would unfold until 9 o'clock this morning. This is truly an unprecedented situation, and one which could cause irrevocable harm to our nation. But, Madam Speaker, it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to continue down this misguided path. We could instead follow the wisdom provided by none other than Abraham Lincoln during another divisive time in our nation's history and listen to the better angels of our nature. We could choose a more positive, constructive path and vote down this ill-conceived effort. We should tone down the political rhetoric. We should work together to solve the problems that face our nation. We should put aside our differences and find common ground. And we should bring Americans back together, because there's no crisis we can't overcome if we stand united. And I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio yields back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Herrera Butler.
The gentlewoman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
My fellow Americans, I rise today to stand against our enemy. And to clarify, our enemy isn't the president or the president-elect. Fear is our enemy. Fear tells us what we want to hear. It incites anger and violence and fire. But it also haunts us into silence and inaction. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid of what people will say or think. I'm afraid of being devalued. I'm not afraid of losing my job, but I am afraid that my country will fail. I'm afraid patriots of this country have died in vain. I'm afraid my children won't grow up in a free country. I'm afraid injustice will prevail. But truth sets us free from fear. Truth doesn't guarantee bad things won't happen, but it does promise to always prevail in the end. It has no shadows where darkness can hide. With truth comes love, and we could use that right now. My vote to impeach our sitting president is not a fear-based decision. I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve his time. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Van Dyne.
The gentlewoman from Texas is yielded 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Today, I should be in my district working for my constituents. Instead, I'm back here in Washington because the majority could not resist another made-for-TV impeachment. American workers are losing their jobs and struggling to feed their families. Small businesses are being forced to lay off workers and close their doors. Families are tragically losing loved ones to the coronavirus. Instead of creating or even saving American jobs or negotiating additional COVID relief, we're debating an impeachment that's been preceded by no inquiry, no meaningful debate, and no due process. In 1 week's time, Joe Biden will be the president. The American people need us to rise above the heat of the moment, to focus on their needs and deliver real solutions. Because the majority decided we should debate whether or not to remove a sitting president in just 2 hours. I'll be brief. I oppose this article of impeachment, and I yield back.
The lady yields back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Bordeaux.
The gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I teach a civics class where I point out that our democracy is not self-executing. It requires people of good faith and ethics to make it work. The president has repeatedly challenged Georgia's election results, but despite 3 recounts and many investigations, the results are clear. Joe Biden won Georgia. The idea that our election was fraudulent is a lie. Our president used this lie to incite a violent mob to attack the Capitol. I ask my colleagues to act with ethics and good faith, to reject these lies, and in this case, to support the article of impeachment. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Posey.
The gentleman from Florida has 1 minute.
In our campaigns, we may be adversaries, but usually after the campaign season's over, we have traditionally come together for the good of our nation. Now, more than ever in our lifetimes, we are a divided nation. One of the reasons? The resist movement, which has harassed, harangued, and otherwise denigrated the president since the second he became the nominee. While his sins may be different than yours or mine, they are clearly not treasonous. Let our men and women in blue, who suffered a lot more stress than the members of Congress they protected, have the time they deserve to recuperate, and do the same for millions of Americans who feel they've been disenfranchised. I beseech my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, if you truly want our nation to heal, vote no in this resolution. It reeks of nothing more than revenge and sets a dangerous precedent. May God continue to bless the United States of America.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Brown.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A week ago, Americans in this chamber lived through one of our darkest days. The commander-in-chief incited a mob of insurrectionists to overturn the results of a free and fair election through terror and intimidation. They failed, but this violence took its toll. People died, Our country's temple of democracy was vandalized, and our image as the world's leading democracy was shaken. President Trump represents a real threat to our national security, our democratic institutions, and the people of this country. We cannot let Donald Trump, who actively orchestrated sedition, lead our nation's government for another 7 days. We cannot wait until January 20th. Donald Trump must be removed. Thank you, and I yield back the balance.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York continues to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I also want to thank my Democratic colleagues for finally joining Republicans in condemning mob violence after 6 months of refusing to acknowledge it. But I'm really tired of sanctimonious sermons on being a sore loser from some of the same Democrats who opposed accepting results in elections past. Democrats have objected to certifying every Republican victory of the 21st century. In 2000, 2004, and in 2016, Democrats objected every time. When they objected, it was patriotic. But when Republicans do it, we're inciting a mob. We're liars and we're traitors. This is the double standard we should expect under total Democrat control. They've called for unrest in the streets. They've called for harassing cabinet officials. They've objected to certifying election results time and time again. Even the Judiciary Chairman secured clemency for a domestic terrorist who detonated a bomb right here in this building. But we're the extremists? I don't think so. We've been silenced by big tech on social media, by corporate America, and now the other side wants to silence us on the House floor. This is a sad day in America. I urge my colleagues to vote no.
The gentleman's time's expired.